Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Trackmania. We are back once again. It is Tuesday at 8 p.m. It is episode 27. We are back. Me, Turbo, Erwin, we're back to bring you this week's Trackmania news, this week's Trackmania information, this week's Trackmania rant, and this week's Trackmania talk. So, this week, of course, we have, I suppose, a few old topics coming back, a few new things to talk about in those topics, of course, but we will get into that in due course. I'll just remind everyone who has joined us early doors once again that this podcast is, of course, brought to you by esac.gg. Of course, check it out for any future and current tournament information, and also check out the new competitive open map pool release, which will have videos covering each of the maps being released within the next few days. So keep an eye out for that. Links will be provided on all the social media platforms. But I'm your host, TM Scotsman. However, despite, being almost a full package myself, I did have to draft some sort of eye candy in once again. And I am joined by said eye candy. It is LuckersTurbo. Welcome, sir. How are you doing? Week 27. I hope all's well over there in Germany land.
Yeah, week 27, I mean, almost half a year that we are doing that, if you think about that. And first of all, nice new microphone. I mean, I like the old one as well, but I think the sound quality is a little bit better with this one. But yeah, in Germany, everything is good. I mean, we have restrictions now where you cannot leave your home from like more than 15 kilometers when the incidential rate, I think it's called like that as well, is higher than 200 in 100,000 people living in an area. But other than that, yeah, I'm good. I mean, I'm chilling, doing a lot for university, and exams are coming closer and closer. And then there's also some preparations for casts that are coming up. There's the French regionals, Trackmania Grand League. I mean, I somehow have found a spot, but it's always like a little bit in the air, as you say in German.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm doing good, man. What about you, man?
I'm doing okay. I mean, things are kind of taking a little bit of a downturn, both in terms of Corona, in terms of my work, casting, everything's kind of taking a little bit of a kind of slowly slide downwards. So could be better, I suppose, but at least I've got the podcast to run with, as they say. I've got the podcast to keep me entertained, to keep me happy. I've got an hour or so to spend with such lovely company as you and Erwin, although Erwin, I suppose, doesn't feel fit to talk to us anymore. I think we scared them off the last time we got him on a podcast. But nevertheless, so today's topics, the theme and the name of the episode is New Year, same competitions. Now, for any who that is not immediately obvious to, just to kind of give an idea of what we're talking about in this. Now, of course, New Year 2021 is now upon us. However, we are having recurring themes in terms of what competitions are happening, what we can expect, and things like that moving forward. We, of course, have, which has just started, the Fullspeed League, which lovely man to my left or right has been casting. And also we have, of course, Trackmania Grand League, which is starting up within the next few weeks with its accompanying Open Grand League with its different kind of nuances to it, so to speak. Also, of course, other competitions which are going to be happening throughout this year, which we know to expect from previous years, along the likes of the Zerator Cup. And of course, as always, if you do have any issues, any parts of Trackmania's ongoing life, so to speak, that you wish for us to discuss, then simply hit us up. So, I feel the easiest, or well, the most natural part for us to start off is as what's just happened in Fullspeed League, of course. I understand you were casting the qualification system for the Fullspeed League. Would you maybe be able to give us a little bit of a run through of, what kind of players we're seeing in this tournament and how the tournament's shaping up now the qualifiers are done?
I mean, we have seen kind of every player, every notable player in this competition. I mean, how this competition works in general, we have 16 teams that have no seeding, and we have the seeding going on in the on Sunday. First of all, the viewer numbers were insane. They were insane. I was thinking, okay, like 20, 30, 40 views, but we were ending up having an average of 135 viewers.
Wow.
And I streamed for 2 hours, so that was absolutely crazy. The FS scene was a little bit, representing in my chat was a little bit edgy. I was trolled sometimes. I should have spectated Joe, and then they were like, Joe Mama,
Yeah.
And I was like,
ban them all.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I did. I mean, they were a little bit edgy, but in a positive way. So I really like that. Also, they were like cooperative and had understood me that a seeding, of course, which is time attack, is hard to cast. But it went out pretty well. I mean, first it had 3 phases. In the first phase, we had all 16 teams being represented by each player. And the worst 4 teams had their seeding slot decided. So 13th to 16th position had those respective seeding ranks, and then top 12 moved on to the second half, or the second third of the seeding. And then the top 7 to top 12 has been decided, and then place 1 to 6 has been decided in the last round of the seeding. So I think that is understandable. It was a different format. We also had a tie for 6th position, so that we had top 7 playing the last step, which was cool to see. And yeah, in general, it was interesting to see the meta there. I mean, Fullspeed is a very momentum-based style, but I think it was really good. I really like the cast. I mean, I don't have that much knowledge when it comes to Fullspeed, but also the organization with Nathan again. It's always a pleasure with him, and too bad that I couldn't have a co-caster. Was everything very spontaneous that I also was able to cast the seeding. But yeah, it was very good. I mean, have you followed it or something like that? Do you know anything about the teams, or should I go into that as well?
Well, yeah, I know about the teams. One thing I did very much enjoy about the Fullspeed League is the organisation of it. Now, just to give everyone a kind of rundown as to what we were kind of having from the Fullspeed League, is essentially, I mean, first of all, they've got a very strong Twitter game. I'll give them credit where credit's due for that. Not only that, but sorry, slightly terrifying, but they've got a lot of different kind of things that they're bringing to their league, so to speak. And I don't mean that just in terms of a format or something like that. Even just some little things like player ratings and a lot of in-depth graphics, you know, this kind of new seeding phase and all the rest of it. And you can see it's been effective as it's attracted, you know, a lot of the very strong players from the Fullspeed community. A lot of people are invested in it, and a lot of people are watching it, as you've seen yourself through, know, your casting numbers looking very good for it. But yeah, I would say Fullspeed League has been very interesting for it. And as I've said there, you know, we have had the top teams and the top players being represented, with the exception of, you know, some of the older French players, which, you know, are kind of in the tail end of their careers, or, you know, retiring, so on. But yeah, I mean, definitely a competition which has stood out from the rest from me. I mean, we see team competitions happening, you know, left, right and centre throughout the years of Trackmania, but I think this is a very fresh approach. Even if it's not very much different, it's like putting a fresh coat of paint on something. You know, it might not change that much, but superficially, it looks very good. You know, that's the first impression I would get from the Fullspeed League.
Yeah, actually, a very good impression. I mean, you named it, very innovative things that they wanted to implement. And also there should be, I mean, I kind of want to leak it now because we didn't make it public yet, but we are planning some sort of like podcast or some sort of recap that we do on every Wednesday, where we go over the matches and see what happened, implement some highlights and stuff like that. So also like a sort of analyzing approach, which is also super cool. So Nathan is really into that, but he's of course very busy at the moment as well. But I think we can realize that, and this is also some sort of like to see if this works out or not. I mean, the seeding system worked out pretty well, and I think there are some other things that they are going to do as well. But just take a look at the participants and the teams. And I mean, I'm not really into the Fullspeed scene, but let's just take Team Numelops. We have seen this Apple, Darkbringer, Harry, just to name some people, Kanzinka. So it goes on for the teams like that. I don't want to name out every team here, but we have all the Fullspeed players playing in there. And one thing that you have mentioned, of course, is the thing that people are involved and also into this tournament because they're really enjoying the organization, and you can really see it by just who is playing this tournament, which is really cool to see. And I think it will be, again, I mean, it was already nominated for event of the year in 2020. And I think this one, I mean, we're only in January, but it has a good chance again, because we can see that that's the theme of the competition. Fullspeed is not dead. And I think this gives us a very good reason why Fullspeed is actually not dead. So cool to see this tournament, and glad that I'm involved. And maybe we can hop into a duocast poll if you have time on the next weekend or like 2 weeks after that.
Yeah, well, certainly we can see what we can figure out in terms of casting Fullspeed League. I mean, it's something that's always very interesting to watch, but it's always very challenging to cast from the outside perspective, as it's often in Fullspeed, it's very, very minute things which will really set apart a top player from, a player who's made a mistake in a round. So it's difficult to cast, but it is certainly entertaining and people seem to enjoy it. But one thing I really want to point out, which I feel has been illustrated very, very well by the participants in this tournament. Now, there is only 16 teams registered for it, but all of these teams are, the majority of them, at least some of them are more novice teams or more entry-level teams perhaps, but a lot of the teams that are involved in this have very strong lineups. It's not just that we're having teams coming in that are just filling up the numbers with like inactive players or players who aren't really interested anymore. But also what I think this lineup of teams and players shows is how the investment in the Fullspeed scene from the likes of the Fullspeed League staff has really paid dividends coming to this point. We have a very strong lineup of teams. You have 2 teams from Aurora Racing, one containing their kind of current top players, as well as one containing a lot of some of their historical top players. Kind of separating that into 1 and 2. You also have Numalops, of course, being the kind of all-stars, so to speak, of Fullspeed, at least in recent times, albeit maybe not the undisputed best team or anything like that, of course, but and you have their kind of what was previously, maybe not still, but regarded as their academy team of Hydra, with the likes of Ethel, Adi, Atomic, and so on, a very solid team in its own right. But while we talk about those teams which contain largely experienced players, you do also have some other teams which are really kind of either bringing back players into some certain lineups. You have Evo, of course, managing to field 2 lineups and 2 very strong lineups. You have like the French. I would say the French rising stars and our OnlyFans, with the likes of Zeroja, Ted, Cam, 3 very, very, very interesting Fullspeed players to keep your eyes on, as well as Navi, but we'll not talk about him. Anyway, the main point I'm getting at is here you have a mix of old players who are interested in coming back and playing Fullspeed. Players who are kind of currently around, OTAC also in our OnlyFans line, attracting players from other realms of Trackmania, shall we say. But also we're having new lineups come and move forward and progress through the scene, like the Rewalls lineup. I remember Rewalls were making efforts in tech and they were in Division 5, Division 6 or something like that. But now they've got 2 very credible lineups with very credible Fullspeed players. Might not be challenging for titles or anything like that, but they're players that definitely deserve to be recognised and recognised for their efforts. So I think the progression of Fullspeed is definitely starting to be recognised, and hopefully the quality of matches in this upcoming season will represent the progression, or I suppose Fullspeed really coming back to what it used to be. I mean, Fullspeed has historically been a very popular environment. However, the last 2 years or so, maybe the last 3 years, kind of took a few steps back, but it's nice to see that they're now bringing themselves to the centre of attention.
Yeah, I mean, I was remembering playing Fullspeed, like I think 11 years ago, when I wanted to go for 90,000 points in Nations. And I mean, it was really Fullspeed to be the go-to there, and also had the most iconic maps there that were really hard, but also very good maps. So I just have to say that from the get-go on, like from 2010 to now, we always had very good Fullspeed maps. Of course, it has evolved, but maps were really enjoyable to play and also to cast. And also one thing that I want to mention here is, I mean, I think the minimum of players in a team is 4, and we have no team where it's like, okay, we have like the Afi, Gwen, and I don't know, someone of that. We have those good players being split amongst all the teams, and that every team has a complete lineup. And that they can also say, okay, I'm practicing map 1, you practicing map 2, that they're going to split it a little bit like in CPS. And I think we're going to see something like that. So, I mean, how it will continue here in the after the seeding, we have a group stage where every group, so the 16 teams have been split into 4 groups, so 4 teams per group. And those 4 teams are battling it out in a double elimination bracket. And they're going to decide who is qualifying to the playoffs. I think top 2 is qualifying to the playoffs. And then we have, again, a double elimination tree until we have our grand finalists, of course. So it will be a messy tournament tree, but if you have seen something like that, it will go on. So the first play day is this weekend. I unfortunately cannot cast this because there is another event that I would like to talk about afterwards going on as well this weekend, which I'm really looking forward to. But there will surely be someone else who is covering that. But I mean, to that point, I would say, okay, well, Scotty, what do you think? Who's gonna win that? Who's gonna win that thing? And to be honest, I mean, I'm not that experienced when it comes to full speed, but I could also not just by the names tell you who's the contender here of winning this tournament, because I think everyone can beat anyone here.
Well, to be honest, I think the fight for the win is going to be between 2 teams, and that's going to be Aurora Racing Silver and Numalops. Now, Aurora Racing Silver have been winning a lot of the tournaments recently. They've had top 1 from the Glitch Edition, they've had top 1 from the first season, and they are carrying much the same lineup as they did previous to that. TK, or previously known as Shadow, Mudda, Div, BCP, Paragraph, and Mooney are all, relatively solid and relatively well-rounded players. Numalops having Cenas Apple, Crazy, Dan, Darkbringer, Harry, and Kanzikas, I believe you said it was said, and a newer player to the top side of Full Speed, but nevertheless certainly not a letdown by any stretch of the imagination. However, one of the important things when we talk about these 2 teams and, kind of going blow for blow, so to speak, your key player is always going to be players like Dan and players like Mudda. However, Mudda, of course, is going to be playing in Trackmania Grand League this season. He won't be able to prioritise Full Speed League, as, of course, Trackmania Grand League will take, the rightful kind of first priority in his mind. Now, Mudda may have a lot of time on his hands and may be able to still put in a reasonable amount of effort into this, but I think that does put a little bit of a one-up on Numalops. It'll be interesting to see what Numalops really has in store. But what I think is very interesting about this, we do have the battle for first place, which is going to be hotly contested, as I believe the 2 teams are very evenly matched. However, what I think is most interesting is who's going to win the battle for third place, as I think those teams will comfortably take second. However, through Aurora Racing Black, Hydra, Evo, our OnlyFans, and maybe one of the other teams, perhaps, I don't know, in the Rewalls lineup, perhaps, can maybe make a little bit of an impact. But these, all 3 or 2 or 4 of those teams, if you stretch it to Rewalls as well, have very, very strong players in their lineups. I was talking previously about OnlyFans having, Ted, who was taking world records in previous editions, or at the very least top 2, top 3 times. Just his consistency letting him down. Zero Jab, very, very strong player. Cam, very fast. Navi, very experienced, but also a noob. But we also have the other teams which do have solid players, from head to toe. So it's really just going to come down to who's going to put in the most preparation and who's really, who the map's going to suit. Because I think Full Speed is one of the environments that has went through one of the biggest changes as a result of the new blocks coming in through the new Trackmania. The maps are very much different, and Full Speed is, as we've said, very much about keeping your momentum. And with new block combos coming in, you're essentially going to need to relearn how to approach entire sections of the track. So it'll be interesting to see, and I'm looking forward to it regardless of I'm looking forward to it regardless of who comes first, second, and third. I think it's going to be a very interesting tournament.
I think so as well, and that's what I wanted to give out to you guys. So if you're not into Full Speed, give it a chance. Watch the POV or my cast, because it will be a blast. And it was already a blast. I think the last team competition was covered by Riolo, if I recall correctly. I think it was at the beginning of 2020. And this one was also nominated for Event of the Year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is like that.
Yep.
And I mean, it's just the beginning. There are a lot of play days. Let me actually check into my cheat here. We have, it will go to the 14th of February. So that will be a long time. So 6 dates ahead of us. That is good. 6 casts will be there. And that will definitely be interesting. So that is the FSL. Looking forward to that. And then there's another tournament coming up this weekend. I think you haven't really heard about that, about the French regionals, but actually the final round, when winning it was Eric's awards was moment of the year. So that was very cool. And
who was casting that?
It was me.
Yeah.
The budget Frostspiel was it. I sound a little like Frostspiel in this one. But yeah, this was such a good tournament. I mean, it was split to, I think, also several weeks beforehand, but now it will be one weekend. So let me actually check. 13 to 19 on the 16th of casting, and then from 13 to 21 on the 17th. So Rip Voice on Monday, but hopefully Tuesday it's back again. But then I have a lot to talk about that. So what have you seen about this tournament in the past and also today? Have you seen anything about that?
Well, I think the French regionals, along with other early adopters, things like the Game World Cup and so on, were some of the early cups that really caught on to the mixed style wave, along with of course, Trackmania Grand League. You know, TRF, I believe, was its original abbreviation. Trackmania Regionals of however it's said in France. I don't know. Anyway, so it was very one of the earlier adopters of the multi-style kind of mapping style, so to speak. So it was something that caught the eye immediately. However, initially it was a little bit hard to keep track of due to the fact that, you know, it was heavily French targeted, shall we say, which is harder for people from outside of France to keep track of. Luckily, of course, we have casters like yourself getting involved in such like that. However, I think it's very much a good thing, along with things like the Baltic Team Cup, that we are seeing regions developing to the point where they are able to hold events for their own region. You know, it's not just that if you are hosting an event, you need to open up to everyone, which I would say would be the better way anyway. You want to be inclusive, not exclusive, I would say would be the phrase I'd use there. However, I'd still say it's a positive thing to see France. I mean, as we knew it would be anyway, if any region was going to be prosperous, it would be France. But not only to see, I suppose it really shows France's development, so to speak. You always see not only your old kind of French players, but a lot of new ones as well through the French regionals. It's always very interesting to keep track of. But I've not actually, unfortunately, been involved in casting it in any sense. It's really awkward to scratch my eye. I'm not used to this mic position. But anyway, what can you tell us about your experience? Because I understand this will not be, as you're saying, the first French regionals that you will be casting. Maybe the second or the third, if I'm even correct in saying.
It will be the second one, and the first one. I mean, viewer wise, it was not that much, because that was one of my, I would say, biggest casts that I've gotten besides Trackmania Grand League. And I was very honored casting this one, and it was such a high-level competition. I mean, as you've said, there will be mixed-out maps, but the tournament used to be in Trackmania 2. And we have seen so many close rounds. And, I mean, the players who were participating in the last season, just the final, we had Binks, Link, Gwen, and Coco. They are also participating. We are only missing out on players like Aurel, who's of course involved with the Trackmania Grand League practice and stuff like that. But it will be such a high-level tournament. I mean, just scrolling through the persons who have signed in for that, we have Wosile, Busy, Dizrods, Enner, Hedra, like Hugo. I could go on like that, and I'm only at H and the people who are online. So then Link, of course, Mephisto, Super Kaluf is also playing. So on all the players, Sika. And Vulnera, those players, so many good players are playing. And also, you've mentioned that players who have very recently just become good in the game. And I'm also looking forward if they can maybe dethrone some of the players like Carl or Link or even Gwen. That will be a head-to-head battle, and I think the first head-to-head battle before the OGL, because we can definitely see those players in there as well, because I would say the maps are pretty similar. I mean, I haven't checked the maps, but OGL maps or TMGL maps are multi-style as well, and so is the French regionals. And the maps in the last episode were super nice as well. So if you have nothing to do, feel free to watch the French regionals, because they were such a good tournament. Also, Geek has covered this one in French. It was also very nice. And I mean, I just expect to have close matches, and also it's sort of meta where some players better on dirt, some players better on ice, and they're just gonna push it there. So something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always the interesting thing when you see other tournaments seem to take. It's kind of a weird way to say this, but it's tend to take mixed style a little bit more seriously than the likes of what you would see in Open Grand League or Trackmania Grand League. And what I mean by that is typically their sections are a little bit more technical, as in your tech sections are more technical. I know that sounds weird, but the dirt sections require more technique. If it does actually include full speed at some point, full speed exists and the TRF. You also have some other sort of sections which, again, are difficult. These sections are. It's not necessarily in the kind of Trackmania Grand League approach where a lot of these sections are very easy to do but hard to master. It feels like TRF is more that some of these sections are definitely difficult to do. The sections themselves are a challenge due to the technique required, which is definitely the approach that I like better. I think it really highlights the skill more than taking a more casual approach to it, so to speak. But then again, of course, these two tournaments are aimed towards different people. But I very much am looking forward to TRF. Certainly, if you're going to be involved casting it, then no doubt I'll be checking it out, if nothing else, just to see the webcam. But as I said, it's very nice to see, as you're talking through the lineup there, not only saying, players which we are very much used to talking about when it comes to, say, a French regional scene. We're talking about players as well who are really rising up through the ranks. Like I'd imagine Jean-René perhaps be playing there. Sika, Binks has really came to the forefront last year. Albeit, it was a very good player beforehand, albeit under a different name. I think it was Alex.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It's not Alex.
Not Alexor, not the mapper.
It's Alex from the old Metal League lineup, actually. But yeah, there's a lot of players. Wrong. Yes, that's okay. That's what I'm here for. I'm not just a pretty face. But so it's very nice to see, and I'd advise anyone who's interested in the future of Trackmania, because the future of Trackmania is basically in France, is to check it out and keep track of some of the players who are definitely going to be performing well there, because you're going to be seeing those names much more in future.
Yeah, and I think that's a prime example you mentioned there is Binks, because I remember casting Binks and I was like, Binks, what? Who is that? I was never seeing, or I think I've seen him in Battle for the Crown, but I was like, okay, can he compete against Aurel? And I think he was beating actually Aurel, and Aurel didn't make it to the final, doing a ludicrous performance in the semifinal, and Binks was able to make it into the final last year. He was 4th position, but it was one of the craziest finals I've ever seen. We have seen everything there, so I just can recommend you watching that. That's why I nominated it alongside with the other juries for Match of the Year, and I think it was P2 or P3 or something like that. So a really, really nice match, and I think we're gonna see close matches as well. So if you want a good competition on the weekend, or just in general, Trackmania is coming up with a lot of good events in the future with the French regionals, the FSL, and then there's also, of course, the Trackmania Grand League that is also coming up. So you can see Trackmania is pretty busy, but only when it comes to huge events, I would say. But Trackmania is coming closer. We have seen the second to last player that has his organization announced today, and it is actually a new organization. So we have a link in Gritzi Esport or something like that. So it's a new organization that we are seeing, and we're only missing out on one player, and that is Kappa which organization hasn't been announced yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of situation that's going on there. But I mean, Trackmania Grand League was, of course, going to be our next main kind of tournament to talk about. So it's always going to be the main word on people's lips when Trackmania Grand League comes to town, of course. And as you've said there, we've had the players announced, we've had the organisations attached along with the players, and the only thing we're waiting for is the final rule book to be released. But some things that have been released is that there has been slight changes to Trackmania Grand League. We talked about the little kind of provisional rule book that had been released at some point. There's been changes to the final, the playoff stage, in the sense that it will now kind of deal with the occasion where we were having, the grand final being Kappa versus Gwen, and it just be one person makes a mistake and it's all over, kind of thing, that kind of thing. I believe they said the final stage will be with 4 players, for example. There's a lot of in-depth changes that I'd say we'd probably be able to go into next episode, as hopefully the full rule book will be out at that point. That's something I want to go over, and we've got all the cards on the table, so to speak. But also some little changes, like they've brought in a lot of new mappers who are also featured in the new map pack. They've also cut down the lap limit to, I think it's around about 1 minute 10 seconds. I believe max 1:15. And also they have introduced a prize pool and a completely different combine system for Open Grand League. There'll now be a prize pool just simply for your standing in the regular season. I believe it's a total prize pool of €3,000. And also introducing a different combine system that will now contain the bottom 4 players from Trackmania Grand League and the top 20 players from Open Grand League going through into the combine status. However, one of the interesting things, again, without getting too much into it before we have all the information on the table, is the combine players will be fighting against the combine players. So they'll be fighting against each other for the spots in Trackmania Grand League. They won't be fighting against the Trackmania Grand League players. However, the Trackmania Grand League players will be fighting against each other to stay in the league. So it's not as if, they'll be punching down, so to speak, and they'll be fighting the Open Grand League players to stay in. It will be that 2 Trackmania Grand League players will face off in, say, a 1v1, so to speak, and the loser goes down and the winner stays up, kind of thing. It will be much the same as that. But again, we'll go into that in much more detail when we get more information on it at the moment. But what are you thinking of Trackmania Grand League and the little, well, I suppose not little, but the limited information that's available so far, and without actually having it all on the table just yet?
Yeah, I mean, that's the old story a little bit. I mean, that's the 4th season coming up now. I mean, if you include, of course, the beta season. So it's season number 3 in the official way. But I mean, it's always like that. We have a lack of information. We have the player presentation every day at 18. And then there will be more information coming up after the player representation. Now the maps are getting introduced. But I mean, what other information do you need? I'm asking myself then. I mean, we have the maps, we have the sort of rule book that might be changed, might not be changed. But I mean, other than that, I mean, one interesting thing, and I think that's why a lot of people are motivated of playing the OGL. I'm also trying my best there. I mean, I'm practicing every time when I have a little bit of time, because I think the tracks are really, really good. They're really nice to play, the tracks. I mean, maybe you have tried them on your own, Scotty, or haven't you? They are really good, the maps. And I mean, what's a lot of people are motivated of playing the OGL is firstly that there are 20 spots for the sort of combine, so that you have to qualify. So there's the first step of the combine where player 20 to 5 is going, so top 16 is going there, and from that the top 4 of those 16 players will play against 1st to 4th, if I recall it correctly, in the actual final of the combine. But we're gonna go into that, of course, next week, so don't worry about that. And also there's a prize pool of €2,500, but it has some sort of like hidden, how do you say that? I mean, it's not as gold as it looks, because you need an organization for that, and also the distribution is not clear. So some information are still lacking a bit when it comes to the rule book and stuff like that. But how do you see that? Are players more motivated because they have the prize pool enabled for the OGL now, because there was no prize pool beforehand? Or is it because of the 20 spots or something like that?
Well, it's always going to be a combination of the two. I mean, some players were really dissatisfied at just missing out on the combine spots, for example. Some players were demotivated about the fact that, they were putting in so much effort through the regular season, yet they would still be at risk of not getting into the combine. But also what I think is most important for the combine is that if you are going to be getting into Trackmania Grand League, you're essentially going to be fighting against other people from the combine, which was one of the big issues I was talking about in the combine we had last time, is you would have players who would be extremely capable players in Trackmania Grand League, who would say sandbagged the main season, finished in a low position, but turned it on for the combine just so they don't get knocked out. They're not going to be able to do that anymore. However, they're not also going to be able to fuck up anyone else's spots because, because the combine is going to be separated, essentially. The OGL players will be fighting against OGL players for that spot. So
I really like that.
Yeah, I really like that as well, as the people who are putting in the most effort are going to go up and the people who are putting in the least effort are going to go down. And that's what I want to see. I want to see people who are getting into OGL or staying in the following season are people that really do deserve it, instead of, some people getting a little bit of a free ride, as it felt like at times. But I think it's an interesting change. I also think it's going to have connotations when it comes to the actual Trackmania Grand League season, because, I mean, if you imagine it this way, and you imagine if this was the situation and this was the format that we had in for the previous season already, you would be seeing, players like, who would it be, like Yannex, Bren, Riolu, and I don't know who the last player would be, Matt. You would see,
Matt, yeah.
You would see those four going into fighting for the spots to get put down. I mean, of course, Yannex and Matt did eventually get demoted, but I'd wager and say that Yannex would have a very good chance at defeating one of the other Trackmania Grand League counterparts. Matt would have a good chance as well. Not so much when you're having so many more bonus points over some OGL person who needs to finish like 8 slots ahead of you or something like that. It's going to be a much tougher fight. And as such, I think we're going to be seeing Trackmania Grand League players not only fighting to get into the playoffs, but fighting to avoid the combine spots.
I think so as well. I mean, it's only bottom 4 this time, and you really want to land in that 12th position, of course. And I mean, with that, we have a different battle going on now. We have the top 12 that we have to consider, the 12th position, the 8th position, and of course, the battle for the first position. Now, not from terms of like in the actual race, but when it comes to points after a step. So that will be interesting to see. And so a new addition to that. And I mean, there will, of course, be some sort of, not dramas, but it will be interesting to see that, because it's a different combine, and I think the right approach. I mean, we have the best lineup in the Trackmania Grand League, if you ask me for my opinion, that we've ever had in the upcoming season. Yeah. And so, I mean, players are also hot to go into the Trackmania Grand League from the combine, because now they're seeing, okay, I have maybe only to compete against the combine players only, of course, quote unquote, but you can get unlucky in the actual combine match. I mean, we have seen Granadi not going in with a lot of points. We have seen Massa going in with a lot of points and doing quite conservatively, not doing too good, not doing too bad. And it's like, okay, I have 16 bonus points. I will still be in, he was thinking, or 14 or something like that. But you can see it's more balanced now. Of course, you don't get a head start, but I think that's what you don't need that when you are on P5 or something. You can also redeem yourself throughout the whole pre-combine, that you can challenge the top 4 from the OGL, of course. That's what I think, because the best player will advance into the Trackmania Grand League. Yeah, and then there's, of course, player 13 battling against player 16, I think, and then 14 versus 15. So that will be very interesting to see. And of course, who's also going to make it into the playoffs, because I think for a lot of players, it will be hit or miss. So a nice season that we have coming up for us there. Really looking forward to that. Hopefully both of us are involved in casting, because we have some, not difficulties, but it's hard to get really a response from an organization. And so if you guys have any sort of casting spot, or are you involved anywhere, hit us up, because we don't have a 100% organization yet. I mean, it can change throughout every minute, but at the moment, it's just a waiting game. Just can't say it like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, talking about what has changed in Trackmania Grand League, I think it's only fair to bring up what also hasn't changed. Two things that are at least confirmed not to have changed, which were always very controversial points. I mean, whether you agree with them, whether you don't agree with them, is always, an interesting talking point, was the point system isn't changing, first of all. And second of all, the casting arrangement, or shall we say the streaming arrangement, is not changing either. So to put that in perspective for any who are not aware, the system will remain for points that you will lose half of your points in maps 3 into 4 that you have built up throughout that step. And in map 5 to 6, you will lose all of your points. Now, that is to be fully confirmed, as in if it's still going to be 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and so on in the final maps, so on. However, also on the other side of things, not with the point system, with the casting system, is that essentially it will be once again, they will attempt to have an official cast. However, if it is going to happen, it will most likely be with Sardosh. And also, on the other hand, each organisation will be required to provide their own caster. Now, first of all, before we go into, recasting, blah, 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 and so on and so forth, and talk about our issues with that, I think the only fair question would be to ask, first of all, how do you feel about the fact that we know these things aren't going to be changing? Do you feel like this is, again, another misstep? Do you think this is something that's going to be causing any conflict going forward? We've seen the playoff system is changing a little bit, but not fundamentally, so to speak. What are your kind of feelings of it now that we're kind of getting the base level of information in?
I mean, I don't like the fact that there are 16 casters, because, I mean, let's just say it's a popularity game when it comes to, let's say, Spam and Riolo are getting the most English views, which is fine and, of course, well-deserved. But I just don't like the fact that there is 16 casts. I mean, of course, I was at the first 2 steps. I mean, I was having a feedback with Eminem there, but I wasn't too biased about my cast. And they say that said that to me. I was too much in the action, and I didn't really consider Pack too much. Of course, I changed that. I thought that the cast will be less enjoyable with that. But of course, Pack did very well in the season, so it was good. But on the other hand, I mean, I would also love to get a little bit outside view, but you have to find the right balance with that. But 16 casts is too overwhelming, if you ask me. So, I mean, why just not have, we have the English casting scene, okay, those people are casting. Maybe you should do it maybe like a duo cast that both of us are casting one step. Then there is a geek and virtual casting another one, and then give some newcomers a try who want to try to cast step 3. And maybe we are able to record or something like that, like the old school thing. I don't know, but I mean, it's hard to find a solution. But why do you need 16 casts? That was my opinion. Do you want to have everyone spectating just one player without going to the action? Because, I mean, why should I spectate Pack when he is 2 seconds in front and behind a person, and there's just nothing going on, It's nonsense. But of course, everything can change throughout a turn. He can make a mistake. People can make mistakes. So that's kind of the argument that I would understand. But spectating only one person can get pretty boring. And I think 16 casts are too much. And I hope that something will change throughout that. So is your opinion the same as mine, or do you have something else to add?
Yeah, I would say so, but I think what the most important thing about the casting problem has been that fundamentally it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea to have 16 casts. Now, the reason for there being 16 casts, as far as I understand, is that with these big organizations coming into the game, Nadeo want to capitalize on the organization's exposure as much as possible by making them provide their own stream, their own cast of it. But that isn't working. The reason that's not working is just simply, I mean, from what we've seen through our involvement in casting other organizations. I mean, I've casted for Berlin International Gaming. I've casted for Team Secret, if we're strictly talking Trackmania Grand League. And no matter how big of an organization Team Secret is, they wouldn't be bringing in more than 100 viewers, and quite a good part of them would be people who are, you know, fans of my casting, for example, people who are from my community.
It's the same.
Yeah, and I'd assume it'd be exactly the same for yourself, because so fundamentally, the idea of having these organizations provide a cast to, you know, push up the exposure might work on Twitter, maybe, but it's shown not to translate to a tangible result on Twitch. You know, it's not allowing me to have a massive amount of viewers from the exposure I then get from a leading organization. It's not as if these organizations aren't big enough. You know, Team Secret's one of the leading organizations in the world. You know, I mean, M&M Gaming might not be in the same kind of level as Team Secret, but it's the same kind of problem. I mean, M&M Gaming can lend whatever exposure they like to it. It doesn't mean that, you know, people who follow M&M for League of Legends are going to go and watch a Trackmania cast. You know, that's not how this works. But we think not only the fact that it's that kind of makes it a little bit of a kind of waste, so to speak. Not necessarily a waste, because you look at it in the good side. It does provide casters good opportunities. It does provide people the opportunity to focus on one specific player if they want. But on the other kind of side of things, so to speak, I think it does cause an issue, because people like me and you, we're pressured into focusing on a singular person. We're pressured into bringing an inferior cast to what we're capable of, because we're getting told we need to focus on this guy, we need to focus on that guy, you know? And on the other hand, we will be even presenting a very good cast, but we don't get any viewers, because you know, as we're again saying, it's coming down to a popularity kind of thing. I mean, everyone will go to Virtual, or everyone will go to spam. That's just how things work in English streaming. You know, that's just how the cookie crumbles, so to speak. The rest get, you know, whatever's left of the slice of the pie, and in that kind of sense. So I don't really see the point in having all these other organizations actually be part of it. The only thing that I can see it being beneficial in is if these organizations bring in a personality, as in if these organizations have a content creator. I don't know, say when fucking if Cloud9 got in, and when they had Shroud as part of their organization, if they then, you know, throw Shroud on, he might not have a clue what he's talking about, but if they throw Shroud on, then sure, you'll get X amount of eyes on the game. But just telling these organizations to find their own cast is not working, because these organizations aren't used to doing that. These organizations never have to search for casters. That doesn't happen in Rainbow Six Siege. It doesn't happen in Counter-Strike, in League of Legends, Dota, Hearthstone. Nothing else, not any other esport I can think of. Well, I mean, I always refer to Trackmania as more of a showcase. But anyway, regardless, nowhere else does this. So these organizations aren't very active in doing this. You know, they aren't responding to DMs from casters. They aren't contacting casters themselves. You know, this isn't something they're used to dealing with. So it then becomes very difficult for the casters themselves. And yeah, I think as much as it would shut down opportunities, because let's be honest, there's only 2 casters that are going to get an official English casting slot. They're not going to try out new people. As much as I'd like to have that happen, they're going to stick with whoever gets them the most views, and that's going to be Geek, and that's going to be Virtual. It's as simple as that. You know, as much as there might be a better experience from some other casters out there, Nadal will want to focus on whichever cast will bring them the most viewers. That's what they care about, and that's okay. You know, as long as we know, you know, that's the way I look at it. But the only reason I really like this system is because I actually get to cast in this system. I don't think I'd get to cast in the other system.
Well, I think that's hard to say, but you can a little bit compare it with the actual showcase match. And I mean, we had Geek and Virtual casting. Of course, they're good casters, but I would see some sort of more diversity. And I don't know. I just want to have everything in one place. And that's what we don't have at the moment. We have, I mean, me casting on the Eminem channel, then there's, of course, virtual casting on his channel, you're casting on your channel, and then there are like multiple of other streams. You don't know if it's on the night channel like Geek did, and it's going a little bit, all over the places, let's say like that. And one problem is also that, I mean, they're coming people into my chat and they were talking about Trackmania Grand League and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I really enjoyed the casting. And they were like, yeah, you were casting. So that the casting point is really going under and people didn't really know that you were casting. So, I mean, some sorts are going wrong there. And also the approach that you've mentioned. Organizations are not used to find themselves a caster. It's usually the event organizer who searches for them. And it's a weird approach and definitely something that is unique to the esports world. And of course, Trackmania is, of course, a little bit unique with the point system, with the combine and stuff. I mean, it's a good way, but everything is pretty complicated, if you ask me, for just a person who wants to watch Trackmania. I mean, of course, the racing is simple. You can see who's first, who's second, who's third. But then the point system, just think about it. If you have no idea about any racing game, about Trackmania, about the point system, I mean, we are into that matter so much. We can like think about that and be like, okay, P9 is losing 50% of their points on that. But a new person who joins in the stream is like, hey, what is happening? Why did this person lose points? And this is super confusing, and a lot of things are happening. And then also with the combine and stuff. So it's really hard to have a sort of like a red line in the Trackmania Grand League. And I think it gets described very well with the 16 caster spots where everything is all over the place. So yeah, I mean, that's my opinion about that. But I mean, it's cool to have 16 casters for the opportunity. But it's also not cool because there's so much competition and you kind of get unnoticed. And also with the community, yeah, I had some viewers from the Eminem side. I had the Eminem admins, of course, who are watching my stream and also doing a very good public work. I really like that. Doing good Twitter game. But we only had like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people from outside of Trackmania joining in the stream. And of course, people who are inside of Eminem who already know Trackmania, who also joined the stream, but it is not too much, you know, it could be more. And it's not blamed to the organization, it's blamed to the system, how the casting works. So that's my opinion about that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think, here's long-term thinking for this, right? Now, fair enough, if you've got 16 casts, you'll get, I don't know, say for example, say 10,000 viewers, right? Now, if you have 3 official casts, now, as I said, obviously that would be, if it's French, it's going to be Sardosh or Wingo Bear if Sardosh doesn't want to do it. If it's going to be English, it's going to be Geek and Virtual. You know, that's just the way it is, as much as I can piss and moan about it. German, it would probably be Trilix and Felix Ann if they're up for doing it as well. Now, the thing is, right, that will then, if these are on official Trackmania Twitch channels, right, so to Trackmania, I don't know, EN, FR, you know, German, you know, so on and so forth. Whatever. Yeah, obviously, yeah, I completely forgot what that was. Yeah, DA. But thinking whatever that's going to end up being, right? Now, we will have a conglomerated channel. So everything gets focused into here for Trackmania Grand League. So that's naturally going to get a lot of followers. That's going to get verified. That might have a chance to appear in the Twitch esports section, for example. We can push for this to be more involved as enough. Sort of hiccups and like burps happen at the same time. You know, it's horrific. Anyway, like we can push for this to be so much more officially dealt with in the sense that this can be regarded as like an ESL CSGO channel. You know, we can maybe get specific features from Twitch and things like that, integrations and so on. But what the main thing I think for this, the opportunity that this would raise, you actually get a proper, well-working Twitch channel. That means you've got 3 casts, right? Get producers for those casts. You can have any sort of quality of stream that you want. Instead of having the casters Jesus Christ, having the casters having to control everything that's on the screen and cast at the same time. It's possible, but you're not going to get a good product like that, right? However, if you get a producer, like we have Erwin, this podcast looks significantly better because of Erwin, okay? It's as simple as that. If I was to sit here, start clicking and fucking showing you all these slides and showing you all these different visuals, it wouldn't happen, okay? Like, yeah, I'm not up for that kind of thing. Not that I wouldn't want to, it's that I wouldn't be able to do that and talk at the same time. Same for casting. Like, I'm not able to show all these different slides, start clicking all these buttons, make sure everything's... Hard. Yeah, it's difficult, But if you get producers involved, even if it's just me sitting on Discord muted while everyone else talks and I click the buttons, I don't need to worry about talking, I can do that. Pretty much anyone who's been involved in streaming could do that. And that would allow the production value to step up so that even if you may enjoy this, that, or the other person a little bit more, regardless, you're going to be seeing a better product in front of you, But the main point of this is why I say it's a long-term plan. You then have that exposure, the built-up exposure that you've built up through Trackmania Grand League. Say some other tournament comes along. I don't know, fucking Fullspeed League, right? Yeah. Fullspeed League is a marquee Trackmania event for Fullspeed. Trackmania, they negotiate with Nadeo, whoever's in charge of this channel, to have the official Twitch channel casting on the Fullspeed League. And then you lend the exposure which everyone's went to with Trackmania Grand League onto an isolated part of Trackmania in Fullspeed. Then you have people coming to this that aren't exposed to this within Trackmania. It allows us to kind of recycle our own community. It allows us to kind of promote growth within our own community, and also allows us to kind of unify our community a little bit. People will be seeing on the same channel, they'll be seeing tech competitions, dirt competitions, full speed, mixed, whatever ends up getting negotiated that way under a large amount of exposure, instead of just having everything focused towards one tournament when it's only these organizations that get the benefit. Trackmania doesn't get the benefit from all these other orgs streaming this kind of shit, That's what's getting shown. So that would be my suggestion to it. That would be my proposal to remove myself from the casting game, which obviously sounds a little bit like career suicide. But I'd prefer to see another way for Trackmania to thrive over than myself in that kind of sense. If that's going to cost me the way to, be involved in the casting game in Trackmania, so be it. As long as, the scene's going to have as much chances as it needs. And I think that would be a really good way forward, personally.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good idea. And I was also thinking about that. Why does this game has it? Why doesn't this game have it? And we see it in League of Legends. I think that's the prime example. Everything is in one place when there's a major competition. Why don't you do that in Trackmania? Let's say this week you have, for the English and French side, you have the French regionals. Then for the bigger events like the Trackmania Grand League, you have a cast for English, French, and German. And you just know everything is on one place. And this is so good. Firstly, you said it, the recycling of the community. Also that the community is formed there and is maintained, kind of. That people know, okay, I have to go there if I want to watch Trackmania. And I can expect a cast every Saturday and Sunday. And also a chance for event organizers to have their event on a sort of big stage where they have at least 100 plus viewers, And all the other benefits, maybe like some promotion on the starting side when the final of the Trackmania Grand League is going on and stuff. And those things are missing, and also opportunities for other casters, for people who just want to promote themselves, just to do a cast with one of us, maybe with you, maybe someone else wants to cast, and they can see how it feels like to be ahead of 100 and 300 people casting. So it would be a very good idea. And I thought, why don't we have this approach, or why didn't we have this approach a long time ago? Because other games have that, and with that we can grow the community, because it also addresses people who are, of course, not into the game or who are casual players. And then you can explain everything a little bit more, because I think when I'm casting and you're watching me, you're like, okay, cup mod, I know what that is. Yeah. But not everyone knows what that is. Not everyone knows that. And you have to make that clear. And it's a very good idea. And I mean, I just don't know why we don't have that. And with that, I can get the idea of having 16 casts. I mean, that was the source of our discussion there, to build up a community. But I mean, build up a community, but not a lot of new people are coming into that. Only to the sort of big streams, the people are coming into that. You know, we have like Virtual, of course, building a bigger community with Riolo, which is nice. Then also Sinus Apple with spam and stuff like that. But the other streamers, I mean, Pack, of course, he's a good player. He should be watched, if you ask me. I mean, he was top 3, but he's not streaming on Twitch. And only the M&M people, and the majority was from, or like I would say 50-50, something like that, was from my stream coming towards the cast. And doing that, you know, I mean, it's weird to have that, but I think an official English cast on one place where every event is being cast, having more feedback with the actual organizers and also with the developers, having this one on the slot on the weekend would be a nice idea. I would say that is the perfect solution.
For sure. But I mean, instead of kind of focusing on the problems we have with Trackmania Grand League, 'cause it seems to be something we end up mentioning at pretty much every point of the season. No doubt we'll end up bringing it up again at some point. But first of all, I mean, before we kind of move on from the casting slot, to clarify for those guys, it doesn't look like I'm going to be involved with Team Secret again. As we've been talking about you previously there, it's extremely difficult to communicate with these organizations. I mean, Secret haven't sent me a message since I finished casting for them last season. I've tried to communicate with them to be involved in the upcoming season, as to no avail. I did manage to communicate with Softy, and he advised me that Secret are looking to go with one of their own content creators. So it doesn't look like Secret's going to have a Trackmania cast. Let's just say it's going to have a Trackmania stream. Anyway, so yeah, I'm out of a job pretty much, you know, for the casting job upcoming. However, at least on positive news, you said that you're at least close, shall we say, to securing a deal of your own.
Yeah, I mean, it's old news a little bit. It was a little bit in silence. I mean, I cannot enclose it, but maybe you guys can have a guess, and the guess could be right or wrong, but it's not that hard, of course. But I mean, the communication is really hard, and I mean, we can also do a duo cast. I wouldn't mind that really, because I think a duo cast with both of us would be good, because 4 eyes see just more than 2. I was doing it with Speedy, worked out pretty well as well. If you ask me, it was pretty good. Of course, starting it off with Eric, I think for the first 2 steps or 1 step, was it only 1 or 2 steps? I hardly remember, but something like that. But then I did it with Speedy, and it was way better casting it with 2 people. So, I mean, if I have the actual slot, I mean, I can talk to the person, then we can do it there, because the duo cast with both of us would be super nice, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say a duo cast just in general is going to be nicer. Yeah. I mean, I experienced it especially with Eirik when I was doing the Berlin International Gaming cast. It's so much easier in casting when you've actually got another person to talk to there, but also it allows other people not only to pick up different things with, 2 pairs of eyes instead of 1, but I mean, it allows you to fill different roles, you can focus on keeping the, as they say with the different caster roles, like play-by-play and all the rest of that. But you can focus on keeping everyone up to date and what's happening, and I can pick out little things here, like this person's made a mistake, or this person's losing points, which would mean this in the championship. Yeah. So I can pick up in the other nuances because I'm not having to focus on everything else. So definitely I'd be interested to see that, especially with some organizations, I think, are realizing that there isn't really a point for them to be getting casters in, especially if they had to pay for them. I mean, I certainly didn't make it a secret that Secret paid me a decent amount of money to cast for them. I certainly didn't make that private at all. They paid me a decent amount to cast, but no matter how good of a cast I do, I'm not bringing in the kind of numbers they want. So sure. It makes sense for them, as much as it's probably going to be the same for a number of other organizations, that they're going to be getting one of their own people involved if, this isn't really going to mean anything to them, of course. But that also means that, of course, I assume Secret aren't the only ones that are going to be doing this. That means that some good Trackmania casters aren't going to be in a job. I mean, Geek's looking for casts. I'm looking for casts. Yeah, Marius is looking for casts. Turbo's not had his fully secure. You're talking essentially two people, at least myself and Geek, who have been nominated for Caster of the Year, not confirmed to actually have a cast for the upcoming season. It's a very weird situation to be that proper Trackmania casters aren't getting spots. I don't think there's proper Trackmania casters out there. People who are casting week in, week out, casting because, who identify themselves as a caster, so to speak, who are actually confirmed to be in Trackmania Grand League at the moment. I mean, Cenas Apple's a part-time caster, Virtual's a streamer, and, who else is there? It's a bit of a bizarre situation. But anyway, yeah, enough about fucking our casting.
It only makes us mad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I can't tinge it too much with my own opinion on it, so to speak. Something I want to mention. We know virtually everything's been confirmed in terms of players, in terms of organizations and things like that. Small changes in organizations. Of course, Edelweiss, as a result of Yannick's dropping it, are now having Mudda taking the Edelweiss spot. As you said, they'll link with Greasy or whatever their name is. Also, Kappa is being announced lastly, which does indicate to me that either he's changing organizations or he doesn't have an organization at all.
Yeah.
So perhaps a little bit of a curveball there to be thrown. But also, Space Station Gaming are no longer going to be part of Trackmania Grand League.
Pittsburgh
Matt is no longer part of Trackmania Grand League. And the big news, as has been spoiled by Turbo here, is that Pittsburgh Knights are not going to be involved in this upcoming season, deciding not to renew their contract, as was revealed or kind of indicated that most of these organizations in Trackmania Grand League are tied to 2-season contracts. And with Pittsburgh Knights, they chose not to renew their contracts as a result of frustrations with the league and some other things, shall we say. However, what is your kind of thoughts on the player lineup we have, and some of the facts like players like Tween who are not going to be involved, not going to be representing an organization?
That was a very, very huge surprise for me, seeing Pittsburgh Knights not being involved anymore, because I mean they have done the PK arc, and of course they have supported Tween and also Geek tremendously, I would say, and I think that's a huge loss for the Trackmania Grand League. And I was like, okay, then there's Tween going into a different organization, but actually Tween is orgless, and Tween, the 4 times vice champion in Trackmania, being orgless, and I was like, what is happening? I had to like rub my eyes and see what is happening there, but it's an upset for me, and Pittsburgh Knights definitely was an enrichment for the Trackmania Grand League, and now they are not there anymore. And Tween has no organization. I mean, he was struggling a bit throughout the season. He didn't make it to the playoffs, but I mean, he always had a good mentality. You could have seen it in step number 6, where he put in a lot of effort. Eventually, has gotten himself a lot of points, and I can understand that. But that's the first organization who's like setting a sign and saying, "Okay, we do not support that due to frustration. Our player did well and he didn't make it into the playoffs." And that's really sad to see. Oh, not only for Tween, but also for Geek, because for Geek it was a huge, like a very, very good opportunity of like promoting himself. Tween being one of the best players, of course, in general when it comes to tech and stuff like that. And it's sad to see that they left. For Space Station, I think it was a little bit clear that they gonna leave the Trackmania Grand League because of Matt. I'm not sure if Matt is still contracted with them. I have no idea. He could be, he could not be. But I thought, okay, maybe they're gonna take a different player then. I was thinking someone like Mudda then, and then Link joins Edelweiss because he's from France. Edelweiss is a French organization. I was thinking something like that, but it was the complete opposite somehow. It was a little bit weird for me seeing Mudda in a French organization. I was thinking, okay, either he's going to Space Station or picking up an Oceanic organization. But yeah, too bad seeing Pittsburgh Knight leaving. So what is your opinion about that, actually?
Well, I think the fact that Pittsburgh Knights has dropped out has been one of the most important organisation dropouts we've seen since the Dignitas and Expert days. And the reason I say this is that Pittsburgh Knights, if I'm correct, were the only organisation, apart from GameWord, who were already involved, to actually get involved in the scene. Solary, yes, you're correct, yeah. So Solary, GameWord, and at least outside of France, then I'll say, you only ever had one organisation that was investing themselves in any sense in Trackmania beyond their own kind of interest in their player, so to speak. In fact, I'm wrong there. Yeah, Space Station Gaming hold their cup, so both of them are now losses to this. But yeah. I just kind of lost the plot a little bit there. So I suppose both of them can hold their point to this, but I think Pittsburgh Knights are the most significant one for that. And in the sense that Pittsburgh Knights were clearly invested in Trackmania. They were planning to host more editions of the Pittsburgh Knights ARC. You know, they hosted one successful edition, was a very interesting tournament to watch. Clearly had a lot of thought and kind of passion driven into it. It wasn't just, a side thought kind of thing. Space Station Gaming holding an event, I felt that was more kind of, they said to Matt, like, here's €200, make a cup kind of thing. But yeah, I think Space Station Gaming is definitely a big loss in the sense that these two were, at least outside of France, were the only organisations, again, someone will fucking correct me and say someone done this or whatever, but the only real organisations that really put anything into Trackmania, like, because everything at the moment goes into Trackmania Grand League. Nothing really else goes into Trackmania, whereas these organisations came in with their own tournaments, came in with their own... their own touch on things and that kind of thing. And like I said, I think that the fact that those two organisations, the only two apart from Solary, and if there's any other that someone mentioned, I forgot, these are the only ones that held something outside of the... If I put it simply, these are the only ones that showed Trackmania that Trackmania matters to them. Okay? All of these other organisations, they might have a good Twitter game or whatever it is like that, but they've not shown Trackmania that they really give a fuck about Trackmania, to be honest. Like, they'll pick up their own players, sure, maybe for their own interest, because they want to be represented at this level, but none of them have went out their way to hold an event here or do this there or, stoke up some kind of interest here. I think that, I mean, maybe a bit harsh to say none of them have done that, but I think that Pittsburgh Knights and SSG, just simply by hosting their own events, really were the outliers for that, really were the trendsetters, well, what we hoped would be the trendsetters for that, having a deeper involvement. But, they're not here. So, I mean, Grizzy coming in and, whoever, if Tween manages to get an organisation again, or whichever Kappa's organisation is going to be, are they going to do the same thing, or are we just going to get replaced with more organisations that are just that to people outside of Trackmania Grand League? The players themselves are getting paid by these organisations, obviously, but to everyone else outside of Trackmania Grand League, it's just going to be a name. It's not going to be something that makes any difference to you whatsoever, because they're not going to have an effect on anything else. They're just going to be there as a team in Trackmania Grand League. That's all anyone else is going to see. That wasn't what you saw from SSG. SSG hosted their own event through Matt, even if it was just, handing them a check and saying, do this, do that. Pittsburgh Knights organised PK ARC, were very deeply involved in the social side of things. Not anymore, So I think it's a very big loss, and I think... I don't think these organisations, I mean, depending who they are, of course, are going to be as enthusiastic. I don't think we've got odds on, the same luck, shall we say.
Yeah, and I mean, also the thing that two international organizations are leaving and one French organization is coming in, is putting the circle very, very narrow together. If this is a saying, I don't know, but you get my point. I mean, it's a pretty bad to see two international organizations going out of that, and we have another French organization coming in. But yeah, I mean, what can we do against that? It's only this sort of factor that the organizations only see, okay, a player is there, I'm just gonna retweet it. I have a cool Twitter game, of course, gonna make some sort of clips and stuff. I mean, Eminem also was very involved in making something with Pack, but of course they didn't host the event and stuff. But also they did a pretty good Twitter game. Maybe you've seen the drawings of Pack, Eric, and me that were released just before the second season. That was very cool, very good publicity work. But of course they don't have the range that bigger organizations have, like Space Station or just Pittsburgh Knights, of course, because they are there for a long time. Yeah, I mean, just another thing, I'm pretty curious to see how it will develop, of course, how the organizations will establish and develop. And yeah, I think everything from that we can see after the first step, which is, of course, in 12 days already, which is cool to see. And yeah, I mean, I would say that's kind of it for Trackmania Grand League, or do you have something more to add? Because, I mean, we didn't really have a topic for today's episode, kind of. We only had, like, Trackmania Grand League, Fullspeed League, and then also the French regionals, talking a little bit about that. But other than that, we didn't really prepare too much. Maybe the chat has something that we can pick up. But yeah, do you have anything more to add to the Trackmania Grand League or
Well,
not?
in terms of Trackmania Grand League, it is going to be something we're no doubt going to end up talking about next week. I think it's only fair there to mention a kind of predictions kind of thing. Once we've got Kappa's stuff and all that through, we can do, a full, more in-depth preview about it, also about the rules and everything like that. Once all the kind of cards are on the table, just as it's coming up to start. But something I also wanted to talk about is a new project that's coming up for ESAC. And of course, not only are we involved in dealing with the likes of the competitive open map pool, which has of course been released as of the 1st of January and is ongoing. So definitely submit your maps, submit them to me like right now. Anyway, so not only we have projects involving that, that play.esac.gg is now released and open for business, and daily tournaments do start next Monday. So if you're wanting to be involved in, I suppose, not necessarily, I was going to say like pug games almost, but if you want to be involved in regular tournaments going on, then play.esac.gg, as has been written in the chat there, is your place to go. So definitely check it out and definitely get involved in some upcoming tournaments, as ESAC is expanding its borders, and we are hopefully looking to provide a more comprehensive Trackmania experience. So do you think in any sense that daily tournaments are really kind of on the rise now with the likes of the Cup of the Day and having things coming in like matchmaking? Do you think the Trackmania week's going to be becoming a little bit busier, perhaps?
Yes, I hope so. I really hope so. And also with matchmaking coming up, I think that will be a pretty good thing to see. I mean, there's Cup of the Day, and then there's also matchmaking, and then also ESAC. Hopefully this will work as well. I'm trying to check it out as well, the ESAC. So maybe I'm gonna play against you guys and beat your ass up, hopefully. But of course, I'm not. I'm pretty rusty in Trackmania. But anyways, I think daily tournaments are really important because right now, of course, I'm practicing for the Trackmania Grand League, but I'm not gonna do it online. I'm doing it myself offline. And of course, I'm watching a stream next to that. But I mean, it isn't the same anymore, No. Usually it was going to Discord or TeamSpeak or Skype or whatever you were using in the past. I was using Skype a lot. Of course, when Discord wasn't a thing. And also TeamSpeak, there was TeamSpeak 2 and not TeamSpeak 3. And yeah, I was playing with friends and doing casual stuff. And Trackmania's missing that casual side. Because currently we only have like those professional events. We have the FSL, the Trackmania Grand League, the Open Grand League, then of course the French regionals if you are from France. So those things are important, and also to give you guys a daily incentive of playing, and yeah, looking forward to that. And I think that this is the next big step for Trackmania, to have an incentive, and an incentive of a daily tournament is of course the right way to go.
Now, I think the only fair way we can round off this episode, as has been requested in the chat, so you guys do occasionally give us content. I can't really knock you too much for that. Doing a little bit of a tier list. Now, you may not be able to see this coming up on your screen at the very least. However, we will run you guys through a tier list for Trackmania Grand League, and essentially thinking what kind of roles we think the players are going to be fitting into in the upcoming season. Are you up for that, Turbo?
Yeah, of course, man. Let's go.
Sure. So we have 16 players and we have 5 categories. So the categories will be from bottom to top. Underdog, so who we think, is not necessarily destined for greatness in this season. However, who we think may have a chance to pull off some upsets. Make or break, so players that are really kind of, players who can really do well or have shown they can really do bad, in a sense, that this is really going to be a season where they'll need to kind of put their foot down and show what they're made of, kind of thing. See in playoffs, players we expect to be in the top 8 or challenging to be in the top 8. Likely on the podium, players will find around about the 3rd to 4th, maybe 5th positions, and can win it all. Now, the players are as follows: Gwen, Pack, Bren, Spam, Massa, Carl Jr., Papu, Kappa, Afi, Link, Mudda, Tween, Evon, Riolu, Aurel, pardon me, and Scrappy. Completely forgot what his name was there. Any players that straight away stick out to you that should be in a certain category, do you think?
Link in underdog.
Okay.
Definitely for me. I mean, he is an unwritten piece of paper for me. Of course, he has shown to us that he can win it all. But I think for his first real season, of course, it's also the first real season for Mudda. I think that I would put him in the underdog spot. He has the capability of win it all. We have seen it in the French regionals. He can dominate against Gwen. But I think Trackmania Grand League is something else. So I would put Link as underdog with the factor that he is like underdog to make or break. He can make it to the top 8 even, I would say. But I have no idea how he is competing against Pack, Papu, Kappa, all those big names,
For sure. So Link underdog, I can definitely agree with that. If I'll add another underdog to this list, let me think. That's difficult because there isn't really many people I would consider as proper underdogs in a sense. Oh, man,
maybe I can. Aaron, is it possible that I can share my screen and you?
Oh, it's already on. It's already on the screen. I was thinking, there's no way we can show this on screen, and then Erwin's one step ahead of us. He's the man in control. He's got it sorted.
Oh my God, Erwin.
let me do it nice and easy, right? So let's fill out the ones that we are perfectly sure will be part of whatever thing. Can win it all. I think 2 fair ones we can put in there is Gwen and Carl Jr.
Hey, I thought Afi and Tween. No, just kidding.
This guy. Eric, do you want your podcast part back? So yeah, Afi and so Gwen and Carl Jr., I think, we're quite fair and we can say that they can win it all. Is there anyone else you would put in that category?
Oh, this one is hard actually because they look so strong. But I also want to name one person that is probably no one really agreeing with me. And I know that Eric will be like, oh, how is he saying that? But guys, have you seen Scrappy at the moment? Have you seen this guy? He's crazy. And I think he can win it all to likely on the podium. Something like that. I wouldn't put him on can win it all, but I would put him one beneath that, likely on the podium. He's winning so many Cup of the Days. He is so consistent, and Scrappy is a player that has improved a lot. He has improved a lot there. So I would not pick him there quite yet, but definitely a contender and the first tier for me of being likely on the podium.
See, the thing I think about Scrappy, right? And the reason why I wouldn't suggest him as being likely on the podium, I think Scrappy is the key example of make or break. Now, Scrappy has shown his prowess and shown what he can do when he cares, and he has came second in not that season there, but the previous season, showing that he is one of the best players in the world in this kind of format, challenging for the win, and eventually did come runner-up. So that is a very, very strong result. However, fizzled out last season. And as a result, it seemed to have been of a lack of motivation, didn't seem to have the same kind of motivation going into this season. So I think players like him, I think players like Massa also are key examples of players who really are make or break. They really can perform extremely well, but they can also just take their foot off the gas and just, coast along, not really give as much of a fuck about the season, pick up a paycheck, and then, head into the next one. So that I would say Scrappy, Massa, maybe some others like Riolu, Tween would be make or breaks, I would say, as all four of them have shown they can be incredible in the season and in the playoffs, but they can also not be incredible in the season and the playoffs. So that's where I'd be putting them personally.
Yeah, true. I mean, I was when it was Eric doing the tier list, I watched the video today. I was completely agreeing with that make or break. But since Scrappy is playing so consistent, I would maybe let's agree. I mean, I also go with you, make or break. Scrappy is one of the players who is like that. We've seen massive points lost, and of course, a player who is bring a lot of emotions into Trackmania and gets thriven. Is it the word? I think thriven. Is it like that? I don't know.
If they thrive, yeah.
Yeah, thrive. And so I would also pick him at make or break. Maybe we can agree on Sia in playoffs. Maybe something like
sure.
that he's something like that. So let's put him in the middle. And yeah, actually, let's go. I mean, we can win it all. I was interrupting a little bit with Scrappy. He's a little bit my secret pick. I mean, I can make a video of that as well if you guys are interested, and maybe you can do your own prediction. But we kind of try to agree on that. But what about Pack? What do you think about Pack? Because it's the third placed player out of the season. Do you think that he can still make it onto the podium, or that he will struggle against the newer players?
So I was talking to Eric about this recently. I think Pack is capable of winning it all. I think he has the potential. I think he's an extremely strong player, but he either doesn't have the time or he doesn't put in the time required to be top 1 or top 2. So I would say that he's a likely on the podium for sure.
Agreed.
I think he should be in the can win it all, but I think the only thing that's stopping him from that is himself.
Yeah, definitely agreed with that. Pack likely on the podium, and for me also the top tier for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now let's think of some other kind of players in that regard. Now, two players which I think are very interesting in terms of what they're capable of in a sense is Spam and Kappa. Now, Kappa's shown us that, again, he's been the winner of Trackmania Grand League. He's been in very, very late playoff stages and, previous iterations of Trackmania Grand League. However, he's also shown us, he scraped through the qualifications for the playoffs this season, if I do remember correctly. And same with Spam. Spam had, difficulties qualifying into the playoffs. And also, Spam had severe difficulties with the format of the finals. So, where do you put them? Do you put them as lock-in for Sia in playoffs? Do you put them... I mean, it sounds really strange putting them as underdogs. I would maybe even say Cap as a make or break, but Spam, I don't even want to say he's a direct lock-in for playoffs, and certainly not in the podium with this sort of system.
I mean, I remember when I think you guys laughed at me when I said that Kappa is not gonna make it into the second round of the actual playoffs. And he went out. He went out. And I think Kappa is a player, you named it, and also Eric named it in his video, who is one of the fastest. He's a very good player. But I think that the new game didn't really get too well to him compared towards other people. The new blocks, of course, he had to adapt to that, but also ice. Ice is, I think, a factor that Kappa is really struggling from, of course, having this hybrid strategy. I'm not sure if he's using that, but it seems that he severely struggles from that. And he is able to win maps, of course. He's able to be the fastest. But I think I would put Kappa on make or break, actually. And then I would put Spam on Sia in playoffs. Because the thing with Spam is, he is one of the most experienced players out there. He's such a beast. He is the 2012 world champion. If you take it into consideration, it's eight years ago when the 2012 World Championship was. And Spam is so experienced. He plays on a high level for multiple years now. And he's definitely a player who can cope the pressure the best out of all of them, I would say. Definitely out of all of them. He is the most experienced player, or like somewhat of the most experienced player. And that's why I would put him there, because he brings us very consistent driving. Of course, in season 1, he severely suffered from point loss. It was becoming a meme, like Bren and Aurel have become a meme in the second season. But I think Spam can make it into the playoffs this year again.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, with what I've kind of got set up here, I think other lock-ins, shall we say, Papu's a lock-in for likely on the podium, I would say. Papu's shown consistent top 4 results at pretty much any major tournament he's turned his hand to. I think Aurel is a lock-in for C in playoffs. I mean, Aurel's consistency has been off the charts throughout seasons and so on. Afi as well, I think, is a lock-in for C in playoffs. You know, he was without doubt in the playoffs last season. You know, he was a very strong player in pretty much all of the steps, I would say. There's only 2 real players I really kind of have a question mark in my head for where to put them. And that's Mudda and Evon. Now, I really don't know what to expect from Mudda coming into this. I think a lot of people have a lot of expectations for Mudda, as he has been very strong in the most recent Open Grand League. He was very strong in the Combine, and also he's setting very good times on 6-lappers. You know, he's setting very good single lap times. So, I mean, Mudda, I think, is in a position to perform in a kind of Gwenarafi level throughout the regular season. I mean, I'm not too sure about the grand finals and so on, but I think Mudda is definitely a contender for C in playoffs. But also, I would like to say that this year is Evon's make or break. And I mean that in a different kind of sense. That Evon has been rising up through the ranks for a few years now, and especially in Trackmania Grand League, the kind of excuses are coming to a stop for Evon. You know, there's no more excuses that he's not experienced in the format. There's no more excuses that he's not had as much competitive experience as anyone else. You know, this is the year, or this is a season where I think the excuses are going to stop for Evon. Either he's going to perform well, you know, he's going to take advantage of the things that he had excuses for. He's going to have had his experience overall, going to have his Trackmania Grand League experience, and he's then going to perform well and be a lock-in for playoffs, perhaps, or he's going to fall into the same loop as he has done for the last few seasons, and he's going to have some issues. So yeah, I mean, would you kind of go anywhere differently with Mudda and Evon?
So Mudda and Evon both make or break, right? Or do you
I would put Mudda in playoffs, Evon in make or break.
So the thing for Mudda is, yeah, I would actually put Mudda in make or break, because I don't know how he will play against those players. We have seen him in Combine. He puts a lot of effort into that. But I mean, step 6 from the OGL didn't look that good, if you ask me. It looked very weak from him. Of course, maybe he just had a bad day and stuff like that. I don't know how he will perform against those players. And it's either or a make or break, a little bit the same like Evon, but in a different way, that it's his first season. And we can either see him competing for the top 5 positions, or just losing points and not getting to the top positions on the maps. And that's why I would put Mudda in make or break and not in playoffs yet. I would change my mind. He's very close to that, but I mean it, of course, also in a positive way for Mudda. And concerning what players we have already ahead of him, like we have Afi, we have Aurel, we have Spam, Scrappy, Pack, Papu, Gwen, and Carl Jr. I mean, those are the best players, of course, who are in the Trackmania Grand League. But I have no idea if Mudda can keep up with the pace of them and compete against them in terms of consistency. And yeah, I mean, pace he has shown, and on that he has a lot of 6-lapper WRs. But he's a new player. He hasn't really played a lot of competitions where he was challenged. He is, of course, playing full speed. But yeah, I just don't know for Mudda. He's a question mark for me, a little bit like Link. But for Link, I'll put him in underdog because he was 3rd in the OGL regular season and not first like Mudda, where people expected Mudda to go through. So I would put him as make or break because people already have expectations towards him.
Sure. I mean, I think as a kind of general blanket for the last 4 that haven't yet been allocated on the stream, Bren, Riolu, Massa, and Tween, I think as a blanket, I would throw them under make or break. Some of them are players that could be even on the podium. Some of them are playoff lockouts, but they're inconsistent in terms of how they're performing from tournament to tournament. And that's not because of how good they are as players. That's because of the time and effort they're able or willing to put in, depending on the situation, of course. So I think as a blanket for them, they're make or break for me. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Also for me, Massa, of course, the prime example, even a better example than a Scrappy of a make or break player. Then, I mean, Tween struggled a lot throughout the season and coming from the tech environment and didn't really play too many multi-style competitions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have seen him in Zerator Cup sometimes, but there also he didn't perform that well. I mean, he didn't really put a lot of effort or practice into that, but he was not a top tier player who was like, okay, I can go to the semifinal. We haven't seen him there. He is a good player. He can learn that also on ice, but I would also put him on make or break because we have seen a beautiful step 6 from him. I think going home with 58 points or something like that. But then there were also steps where he lost his points on map 5 and 6 and he completely teared apart. Bren,
for sure,
always a disappointment for me in terms of his performance in the Trackmania Grand League, because I think he is a player who can also be likely on the podium. He has the pace. We have seen it on the Zerator Cup and stuff, but also this season will be a make or break because he was severely suffering from points loss as well as Aurel, but he couldn't really keep up with that. And he doesn't have the excuse of being abroad or in a foreign country now, like he was in season 1, I think, if I recall correctly, where he was in Australia. But yeah, I mean, that's where I would put him. So, I mean, we have not a lot of things we disagree on, only the Scrappy factor and Muda maybe. And then, I mean, a player that I want to talk about is Riolu a bit, because he was second in season 1 in the group stage, qualified to the actual event. And in the second phase, in the second season, he was almost being eliminated out of the Trackmania Grand League.
Went from second to second last.
Yeah. That is well, what do you think about that? Is Riolu one of the players now make or break in terms of, okay, either I'm gonna make it into the playoffs or I will be in the bottom 4 again?
I mean, for Riolu, I imagine he's going to be one of these players that's going to be between the playoffs and the elimination spots, because he's one of the players that really it seemed to me that his main priority at the very least is not Trackmania Grand League. You know, his main priority is his stream, and his stream is not always going to be having him playing Trackmania Grand League, for example, whereas some others may be more focused on it, or, you know, their stream may be more interested in it, whatever it is. But, you know, of course, Riolu had a lot of things going on throughout the last season, which is always fair. But I think that really, if Riolu makes Trackmania Grand League his priority, then, you know, the sky's the limit for the man. I mean, I do think he'll fall into the same trap as Spam when it comes to the finals, in the sense that he'll be a very consistent player, but I don't think he'll have the outright pace to be able to get far in the playoffs. So, I mean, Riolu's, I think he could get into the playoffs. I don't think he would get to the podium, but it just depends on how he's going to approach the season. And yeah, it's exactly as TK's said there. If he's going to be too busy doing something else, then, you know, then we're not going to be seeing Riolu in the playoffs. I think it's as simple as that. But I don't think Riolu would. It's the same way. I think Riolu is one of those players. He wouldn't allow himself to go into the combine. He's a perfectly capable player of avoiding the combine, so I don't think he's going to allow himself to go into the combine. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. He should focus more on the campaign. I mean, I got a little bit of wind with that, what happened to him in his real life, because I'm a good friend of him, of course. And he was very busy, of course. But, I mean, I hope that it will go better. And that's why I would put him in make or break as well. Because, I mean, despite that, players look better with less training. You know, maybe you get my point with that. Yeah. And you know that you could have really seen that something is not correct with his driving style, because he's one of the fastest player, one of the consistent, and if he makes it into the playoffs, I think he will also perform there, because this format suits him very well with the consistency driving, not being the fastest. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of our tier list. We only disagree with a couple of points. But I think this season will be a blast. It will be super nice. It will be super, super good. And I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, we're both involved in a casting spot. And yeah, I will definitely keep you up to date with that. But yeah, I mean, do you guys disagree with that in the chat, or do you agree? Do you have any other suggestions? Anything that you see completely different? Maybe, let's say, Massa can win it all, or someone like that. But yeah, this is bullshit, is Eric saying. Okay, what list do you have? Let's laugh about Eric's list. I'm just kidding. I know that you almost have the same list.
Yeah, as far as I've seen, it was much agreeable points, shall we say? But yeah, I mean, I think that's with our list done. That is it for tonight, unless people have some other points they wish for us to bring into consideration. But we have been here for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, it was fun again.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun bringing.
Nope. Just kidding.
This guy, I you know, you're coming back in. I don't care. Anyway, no, we'll leave that for another time. But yeah, nothing else really from me. Just a reminder, of course, of ESAC's projects such as play.esac.gg and also the competitive open map pool, as well as the platform itself for upcoming and ongoing tournaments. I got that completely completely mixed around. Yeah, Eirik only bases his tier list on follower numbers, and yeah. But anyway, just before I start shit talking, that has been it from me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That has been it from us tonight. No doubt we will see you again next week, same time, same place. If you have anything, of course, you would wish for us to discuss in the meantime, feel free to hit up any of us on Discord, Twitter, wherever, of course, if you do have any suggestions. But lastly, before we let you go, I will once again remind you to check out our man over to my left or right. If you want to be seeing more of that beautiful face, we'll be casting the French regionals coming up this Sunday over at twitch.tv/LuckersTurbo, if that's even the right twitch.tv/LuckersTurbo, to be checking out the upcoming tournament on Sunday before you check in with us once again next week. But that has been it from us, ladies and gentlemen, with episode 27 of Let's Talk Trackmania. We hope you have a very lovely evening, and we will see you all next time.
Goodbye.